Hey everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Swift Creek Customs, and today I wanted to share a tutorial on how you can create an Eclipse background card in the Leonardo Design Studio software. Here is a photo of the card that I'm going to be showing you how to create. I am seeing these pop up all over in different kinds of groups with all kinds of different backgrounds. They are a really neat card. The idea has been around for a long time. I've seen it for many years using thin cut dies with a manual die cut machine, but there's no reason why we can't do this with our cutting machine software and let the machine do the work for us. So let's take a look at how we're going to set this up. I will say that I have a link in the description below for a free file on these card sizes, but it is for US card sizes. So it's our standard US card sizes that we would utilize. But I want to share with you how you can create your own template that you would be able to utilize for whatever card size you want to use. Now, the dimensions you might use for the inside of this Eclipse shape may be a little bit different, and you may just need to play around with it, not only for your specific card size, but also for the image that you're going to be using. So let's take a look at how we can create this and how you can get to testing. So the first thing I want to share with you is I just brought in my template file, and I want to show you what that looks like. And then I want to again show you an image of the finished project so you can kind of get an idea of what we'll be creating in the software. So here's a look at the finished project. And then this here on the screen is what we are going to be creating. Really, it is a very simple design. It is a rectangle with a bunch of skinny rectangles in the center of it. That is it. So we're going to tell Leonardo Design Studio how we want to set this file up. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to choose a new design mat. This is a new feature coming out soon in the versions 1.1.6. So depending on when you're watching this video, it may not be out yet, or it could be years down the road, and it's been out for a while. So I'm just going to open a blank design mat. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my card front. So I'm just going to choose my draw rectangle tool, and I can go ahead and draw out a rectangle, whatever size I would like. It doesn't have to be a specific size currently because I can come over here to the properties tab, and I actually want to change the color to black, and I'm going to choose a stroke fill or a stroke so that I can see through it. With my lock unlocked, I am going to adjust my size accordingly to what I would like. So I'm going to choose 5.5 for the width and 4.25 for the height. And then I can go ahead and lock that again so it stays at that proportion. Now what I need to create is I want to create those skinny rectangles. So I can just come up here and it's whatever would work for you and your card. So the biggest tips that you want to keep in mind when you are designing your shapes, and once I have it dropped on my mat, I want to choose that stroke so I can see through it. But you want to keep in mind that you need enough space. Let me zoom in here. You need enough space at the top and at the bottom to put your three-dimensional foam tape to give it that lift. So you want to make sure that your foam tape is being covered, or your adhesive, whatever you're using to pop up that second layer of the card, is going to be covered. And I'll show you a trick for that here. But that's what you need to keep in mind to start with. And then once you have your first rectangle, how many you make or how wide you make those is really a personal preference, and it could vary depending on your card size and your image. So that can make a difference. So while you can create a template, it'll probably work for most images. It may vary just a little bit in the final outcome depending on what your image is. All designs are going to be different, is what I'm trying to say, in a very roundabout way. So I'm just going to go with this size here, and we're going to see if it'll work. Again, I just drew what I thought was a decent sized skinny rectangle. I'm going to Control C, Control V, copy and paste. And once I have one copy made, now I can select both of those, Control C, Control V, and it selected my outer rectangle. I don't need that. But I can just continue to make copies, and then once I have those, I can Control C, Control V, just selecting, and I'm making those. So then once I have rectangles to go across my card base, my card front, I'm going to select everything and deselect the card front. Then I can use my align tools, and I want to make sure that they are centered on a horizontal alignment. And then I'm going to come up here to my arrange, and I'm going to use the align objects and distribute horizontally. And then that's going to space them evenly between each other. Now here's the little trick. So my foam tape is 1/4 inch wide. So what I want to do is I'm going to come down here to this draw tool, and I'm going to draw a line. So I'm going to click, and then I'm going to hold my shift key down so it draws a straight line. I'm going to click again, and then to end the line I can right click and choose done. Now this line here, I can change the line width to 0.25. This is going to be my measurement tool to see if I have enough space. And what you can see here is that no, I do not have enough space in between my bars that are going to be my Eclipse area. So I need to adjust this enough that I either get enough space in between these with the current number of rectangles, or I need to delete a rectangle. And I can use this little measurement tool on all of the edges. So I'm just using a basic line to measure my distance. So in this case, I can move this one over to about there, move my little mark, and I can move this one over to about there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything, hold my shift key down, and deselect that outer rectangle. And then I can come back up here to my arrange, align objects, and distribute. Now I can check if there's going to be enough space. And it's really, really close. So you at this point would need to make a decision based on the products that you're using on whether you want to go with this or whether we would want to delete a rectangle. And then I can move this over a little bit further, and then I'll select everything and space it again horizontally. And while it may seem like it's quite a few steps that we're going through, once you start designing in any sort of software, it's going to become second nature. All of these steps that you do, so getting used to the different steps, sometimes it can seem tedious, but it's the way you learn how to design in the software. So once I have those spaced horizontally again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click and choose group so they all function as one group. And then I'm going to select my skinny rectangles and my outer rectangle, and I'm going to center that again because I can tell that it's not centered. So then I can use this little mark, measurement mark that I have created, and I can see if there's enough space on the outside edge, on the slats in between. So it is now centered. It now has enough space that it's going to hide my adhesive when I put it there. On this side, and then what I can do is I can actually rotate this 90 degrees and make sure that I have enough space on the top and the bottom. So once I do that, I can move my little measurement mark out here. You could delete it if you wanted to, but I'll just move it out to off the mat where it's not going to affect anything. So that's just a little trick on how my mind works when I'm using stuff in the software. I can use basic shapes to work as a template, or I can use basic shapes to measure as well. So then once everything is selected here, now we can go ahead. First thing we're going to do is we're going to save this file. So I'm going to click File, Save As. I'm going to save this as my Eclipse background template, and you can go ahead and add your size to it if you'd like, so you know what size that was created at. And then let's come back out here to the 100%. So now I have one layer of my card that I'm going to be creating. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to come up here to my artboard, and I'm going to choose print and cut job. And then I'm going to check the page marks. That's going to add the page marks around the outside of my page. So I am using a standard letter sheet. It has letter sheet here. And then what I want to do is I need to bring in the file that I want to use. So I'm going to choose File, Open, and then I'm going to find that file that I want to use. And then I'm going to be using the same image I did for creating the first tutorial on the text as an Eclipse. That link is in the description below, but I chose this Highland cow. It's actually a sublimation design for a skinny tumbler, but it works for this, so you can get more miles out of your designs that you have purchased. And there is a link in the description below for this image as well. I am doing a print and cut. However, I do not want to cut around the outside edge of this particular image. I want to use it as a background image. So I want to click on background image. I want to make sure my resolution is set to 300, and I'm going to choose next. And then it's going to open that, and it's going to open it larger than my actual page size. So I just need to adjust it down so it all fits on inside those registration mark borders, and then it's going to show up like it should. Now I'm going to move this down here on my card base, and my card front, and I can size it. Since I brought it in after my card was created, it is on top of everything. I want to be able to see through this, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose order and send to back. And then I can adjust by grabbing the corner bounding box and adjust my image to fit on my card how I would like it. And then once I have it sort of how the size I want, I can select everything, and I'm going to choose my align tools so I can align that image within my card base front. So now I have the first part of my design. So this is going to be your top layer. What I want to do now is I want to make sure that this is going to be set up properly. So if I were to click on the send tab right now, it's going to show here that it's going to work properly, but when I come to the send tab, it's going to be blank. What this means is that it's not set up to tell the software exactly what you want to do. So I want to come back to the design, and what I need to tell it is this skinny rectangle here. If I come over here to the properties panel, you're going to notice the action is set for a default of print. Because I told Leonardo that I was doing a print and cut, and I turned those marks on, it thinks everything is going to print, but that's not what I want. I need to change this default to cut. And then I also need to select the outer rectangle, which is going to cut my card front, and I need to change that from print to cut. So then if I were to come up here to the send design, I'm going to choose send. Now it's going to show me my printed artwork, and it's going to show me my cut contours that I would be needing. So it is currently set up correctly. I'm going to come back over here to design, and I want to set that up before I make a copy. Once I make that copy, all of the same changes will be applied to that copy. So what I'm going to do, and this is the fastest way that I found to do it, because you have to have everything stay in the exact same position. You don't want anything to move, otherwise your Eclipse or your design is not going to line up properly. So I'm going to select it all, I'm going to Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste, and I'm going to move a copy up to the top. Now if I click off of it, I can click back on the skinny rectangles only, and I can press delete. And then what you would want to do, I would suggest you do, is select the top and Control-G for group, and then select everything on the bottom and Control-G or right click and choose group. And then it's all going to move as one piece so that I'm not accidentally moving it out. And then we can come up here to our send tab, and now we have our two images. Click send. We have our printed artwork, so it's going to print those 2 images. And then when we go to cut, we have our 2 cut images. So this top one here is going to be a solid background image, and then your bottom piece here is going to be the top layer that we're going to pop up with foam tape. So click on your print artwork, and then you can go ahead and send that to your printer. I choose the more options and I choose my rear tray, click OK, and then when you're ready to print, go ahead and click print. And then we'll pop over to our Siser Juliet and we'll get it set up on the cutting mat and load it in our machine. Make sure you do test cuts before you cut your material. It will save you time, frustration, headache, and materials. Okay, once your print is completely dry, you can take the protective cover off and place it on your mat. I have sped up this portion of the video. You don't need to watch me in real time, but it's sped up 2 times. And then you're going to position the blade housing, the tip of the blade inside that bottom left registration mark. Once you have it set up on your mat and all your test cuts are done, you're going to come back to your software, click on Cutting Contours, and then you can go ahead and click on Send to Cutter, and you'll get the little pop-up that asks you if it's ready. If you've done your test cuts and you're ready to go, click OK, and we are on to the next step. Once you have sent the job to the Juliet or Romeo, it is going to register those marks. In this case, I did end up with a registration beep. It tells me that something is wrong. So I just used the on-screen arrows and I moved the red plus sign to the bottom left corner of that bottom left registration mark. And then I sent the job again and it picked it right up. So if you get a beep, it can happen on occasion. That means something is wrong, and you should take a look at your setup and see if you can either start over or adjust that registration reading in the camera on screen, on the touch screen on the actual cutting machine. So this is sped up as 2 times the cut, but Juliet is super fast anyhow with that cut. And then you want to carefully remove it off of your cutting mat. In this case, when I'm working with paper or other materials, even I will flip my mat over. I use my protective cover on the table and flip it over, and then I can carefully peel my cutting mat away from my material. And especially with cardstock, this helps it so it does not curl. It also helps your materials to release from your cutting mat, which can save your adhesive on your cutting mat. And then here's just a kind of a look at the optical illusion that you're going to see once we have this all put together. And I have the assembly process as well. So here are the 2 pieces, and I have sped this part up for 2 times, and I'll explain as I go. So I'm using 3D foam tape that is going to give it the dimension, and the tape can be applied. You want to have it secure all the way across so that the entire sheet is going to be stable. And what I mean by that is if you do not put tape in the middle on your little slat inserts, it can fall in on the card, and that will decrease your optical illusion of this Eclipse card. So I am positioning 3D foam tape in those slats, and that's why we designed it in the Leonardo Design Studio very, very specifically for the 1/4 inch tape that I am using, and why I showed you that little trick with using a line to measure between my slats and get that just perfect. Because if they were too skinny, then my tape is going to show. That's not going to look good either. So I am just removing all of the backing, and another reason why I sped this up a little bit. Once you get into this process, it goes very, very quickly, but you don't want to see that all in real time on the video. And then you want to line it up and make sure that your design is lined up perfectly with that background image. So then you have this 3D optical illusion effect for this Eclipse card. and that 3D foam tape gives you the dimension for that. And then what I did was I simply used a tape runner and I added it to a pre-made card base. You could go through and make the print and cut completely with a card base designed in Leonardo Design Studio. Then you're going to have 2 pieces of letter size sheet cardstock that you're going to cut. Here are a couple different angles of this card that I created for the video. It gives you an idea of how it looks, or hopefully it captures some of it. It is really difficult to show the really cool 3D of optical illusion effect that this has when you pop that layer up, but I tried to capture that. I would highly recommend that you just find a design that you really like and give this a test and try it out. We would love to see your creations in the Creating with Siser, Juliet, and Romeo Facebook group. If you do decide to try it, it was a fun technique. Check out the link in the description below for more information on the Siser Juliet and Romeo, as well as links to the supplies used in this video. Thanks for joining me.